Side of the Closet. I'm your host, Just B.
And this is Blonde Mafia. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back to episode 2. And yes, you read that title right.
This one's called I Don't Dubai Unless I'm Going to Dubai. And baby, we've got a lot to unpack. Now, let's be real. When I came up with that title, it was a joke. But the truth behind it, not so funny.
This episode is about the moment when you realize that the man that you're with is not who you thought he was.
We're talking about hidden lives, deception, and what happens when the truth shows up in a way you never expected. So now look, I found out twice. I'm not going to lie to you. I found out twice and I was like, nah, can't be. The first time I found out, it was just, I was being nosy. You know, they say don't go looking for something because you're going to find it. So this one particular day, I wanted to get him a tablet. It's when tablets first came out. And he said he already had one. So then I went ahead and I was being nosy and I checked in this tablet and I saw some cryptic messages. And I say cryptic because I was in denial, like, nah, I don't think this is what I think they're talking about. And it was with another gentleman. So I'm like, nah, I didn't believe it. So I confronted him when he came home. And I mean, smooth talker. Like, again, if the sky was purple, if the man said the sky was purple, baby, it was purple. I don't give a damn what you thought it was. I don't care if it was sunny outside, blue skies and birds. It was purple. So that time, you know, I think it was just in the back of my head. It was just like something in the back of my head because I believed him. I believed he was telling the truth. To a certain extent, I believed him. And after that, life was even better than it ever had been. And then the finale, like 10 years later, it happened again. Or 8 years later, I got a phone call from someone very dear to me, very close to me, that said, hey, we need to talk. This is what it is. It was a lot of individuals involved that took a liking and vice versa with each other with my man. And it was like a cold knife stabbed me in my back. Okay, now for legal reasons, I'm not trying to get into too much, but I'm going to give you enough. I'm going to give you enough to sit down and think about your own situation, okay? Now, don't go looking around everybody, like every man, you might be gay. I see how you twitch your hand. You know, don't do that. But for me, when I found out, it was like my world at that moment just ended. What am I going to do? We were going through fertility. I really, really wanted more children. I wanted at least 3. I wanted 3. That's all I could probably afford was 3, okay? They expensive. But, I took my stuff. I slept in another room, and that morning, it was like I just grabbed my baby, and we were gone. We left. But then we came back because I got a phone call. Come on back. We need to talk. I came back home, and I said, why? Like, is this true? And all these different, hell, let me tell you, sometimes you have amnesia because you can't, sometimes I can't remember every detail of what was said to me, but I do know it was a bunch of fluff. Oh, you know, I'm not like, you know, I've just been struggling and I'm not like this and da-da-da-da. Bullshit. Like the shit is out. It's out. And at that moment, you're thinking, how am I going to move on? What am I going to do? And being I'm a strong woman, but it's like, do you stay? Do you fight for your partner? Do you fight and hold on because you have a kid? Do you what do you do? Some people will get up and be like, hell no, that's it. I'm done. No, I hung in there. We went to therapy together separately, you know, counseling. We did everything. But baby, when them urges are there, you can't fight. You cannot fight them urges. And I don't care for every gay man or bi man that's listening. Y'all got an urge, child. Jesus himself gonna have to come down and be like, y'all cut it out. Because I'm sorry, there's no turning back. You can't tell someone you can change. I don't feel like you can. That's a very strong spirit. That's a spirit. We all have spirits, okay? We drink spirits because I like a Merlot. So anywho, that's just the beginning of my situation, you know.
So you bring up a lot of good questions, though, before I speak on my situation, which is there's so many questions when you do find out. Your situation specifically, I found fascinating and you are not alone, because in the group that we mentioned before, Straight Wives of Gay Husbands, which is on Facebook, so many women I found commenting that not only did they stay in the marriage, because there was children, but they had decided to go to therapy. And I found that fascinating because in my situation, I thought, well, what for? The only reason you would go to therapy is if you're going to stay with the person. And then my next thought process was, well, why are you staying with the person if they can't satisfy your needs?
Shoot, you got a spirit of love that you're trying to fight too. You know that ain't real.
So there's a lot of questions. So when you talk about your situation, again, when you and I met online, I found a lot of learning through you and the conversations that we had about because we'll talk about it next, how I found out. I just wanted to understand your journey and why you decided to process it the way you did and go through the steps that you did. Because as you said, I'm the fiery of us two. When what do they say? Hurt people. When someone hurts me, and this man was my everything. He was, as I said, my knight in shining armor. When someone that's that close to me hurts me that deeply, my initial reaction is to hurt them as deeply back, which is a huge character flaw. I'm well aware. I talk about that in therapy every week, but let's just be real. That is my initial reaction. That is exactly what I did. So we'll go down my path of how I found out. Just like you, I found out twice. I found out before I walked down the aisle and chose to ignore it. Yes, I know. There's got to be other people in my same boat. I know there are. So I had someone come to me and tell me that they had a family member who had proof that my fiance had engaged in a sexual activity with a cousin of theirs in the past, and that he was bragging about it one evening when he had too much to drink, and he had a photo of him, and when he showed the photo, my mutual friend said, "Let me see that." And the photo was of my fiance. And she didn't know what to do with the information. She went to very close friends of mine who then joined hands and came to me. This is literally 10 days before my wedding. So the wedding's planned, right? Everything is planned. And this is someone that I've committed my life to. And I've presented with, hey, this happened. This information was given to us. We wanted you to know because we love you. And if it's true, you cannot move forward with this relationship. And dumbass that I am, the first inclination was for me to be angry at them, not him at them, which is wild. Looking back now, it's wild to me that was my choice. No, you're crazy. You guys are crazy. This could never be. At which point I decided to confront him. And one thing about a man who is not ready to come out of the closet is they have mastered the art of deception. They have mastered their stories, and they have mastered that mask that they carry with them. And so he had a story immediately, without batting an eyelash, of why that story existed, what the truth was behind it, and that it was absolutely not true, and that he would supply me with the phone number of the person who was accusing him of this, and I could call them, which, by the way, I did. And that man also had a wonderful story about how, he had too much to drink, it was a lie. Something I didn't know at the time was that they will never out one of theirs. They will not. And so this man knew very well what was about to go down, and that my fiance was not ready to be outed and was about to marry me. And so they had each other's backs. They had a story before I even called. And I wanted to believe it. And I did. And guess what I did next? Walked down that aisle with all of my friends and all of my family and declared my love for this wonderful gay best friend of mine.
They're pretty good damn best friends.
They really are. You know, I can't bash it. It's not all bad, but that's a whole nother episode. We already talked about that episode. But to stay on topic. So 10 years later, the day I found out, which I could not ignore, was I knew something was off. I knew he was off. I know this man. I'd lived with him day in and day out for 10 years. And we went on a vacation. It was our wedding anniversary. When we got to the location, he suddenly did not want to engage in sexual intercourse with me, which I feel like I am not the norm. A lot of the stories I've heard is that these women don't have much of a sex life with their gay husbands.
Because I sure didn't. I was the man. I had to fight for mine.
Yeah, I didn't have that experience, but I understand that that's the norm. My husband was extremely sexual, and so for him to say he didn't want to have sex, especially on a wedding anniversary where we are, at destination, I thought, that's strange. And the next thing out of his mouth was, something's wrong down there. And I thought, and I literally said, either you're cheating on me, which never in a million years did I think was true, because the man never looked at a woman ever. Well, guess what? He was looking at the male waiter. He wasn't looking at the women in the room.
And that, my friend, That, my friend, I never had to worry about him cheating.
Yeah, silly me. I said, you're either cheating on me or something's really wrong with you. And the next thing I know, he says, I need to go to a pharmacy. And he disappears and comes back. And he says, they gave me a shot in the ass. And I think, they didn't give you antibiotics. They gave you a shot in the ass. Now, little old Christian girl me is so naive and green and dumb. It's like, let me just Google, why would you need a shot in the ass?
You didn't even know he had the cootie.
I had no idea. I've never been exposed to STDs, STIs, whatever you want to call them. I didn't know I didn't have exposure to them. Well, suddenly I did. His saving grace was at the time he decided not to engage in sexual intercourse with me. Thank you for that, at the very least. However, we go home, and from that moment forward, I just knew something's off. So one morning, about a few weeks later, he left for work early in the morning. He was a teacher, so special. Taught little children. And he left his Apple Watch on the table. And something inside me was screaming, just check it. And up to this point, I'd always given him his privacy. I am not the nosy type. I'm not the type that looks through his things because he'd never given me reason to. But at this point, I thought, I've got to trust my gut because I hadn't been listening to my intuition and I was ignoring red flags left and right. So I took his watch and I started down the road of trying to hack into it. Of course, this man had a key code on it that I didn't know. But I also know this man, again, 10 years, and I know his favorite number is 7. And so I just started all these different codes that involved 7707s, whatever, until I cracked it. And all of a sudden, the watch pops on. It goes bing, bing. And I was like, and literally inside my heart just beat out of my chest. And I wasn't ready for it. And then the first thing I do, what do? You go to text messages, right? And I see dozens of text messages from male escorts asking for payment, asking for locations, asking for hotel reservations, asking him why he hasn't shown up. Again, my heart is just, at this point, I'm not in my own body. And I decide I'm going to start going through the rest of his watch. I go to, because he's got all the links on there, I go to his Facebook Messenger and I see messages from a guy who I discover is married with 4 children, who he's also having an affair with, who he meets up with on the regular. Again, my heart is just boom, boom, boom. And everything in me is like, is this real? Like, is this real life? Did you ask yourself that when you found out, like, is this really happening?
I don't know. I'm currently smoking an imaginary cigarette listening to your story. 'Cause that's some bullshit.
So here's another thing is what is that stress look like for us, right? That what it does to our physical body and our minds to be put through something like that. And how do we handle it? For me, once I obtained enough information, I had such a physical reaction that I went into the bathroom and I threw up. It was like I was on overload. I couldn't handle the information.
It's traumatizing.
It is. It's the deepest form of trauma.
Your mental is, I told you I almost lost my job I don't know how many times.
Yeah. So I don't know if I should get into what I did from there.
We're going to have to save that for the next episode. You talk about, we call you Blonde Mafia. Your name ought to be 007, buddy. We're going to have to get into this on another note. We're going to go ahead and cut this short. For us, it's just about knowing who he is. It's everything he didn't say, and in that silence. The silence speaks louder than the truth. Thank you all for listening. I want y'all to stay tuned. No matter the mess, no matter the fight, your side of the closet deserves the light. So speak your truth. Don't run or hide. We'll be right here on the other side.